Hello and welcome to Round Robin. I'm your host, Robin McCormick with the City of Hampton. And today my guest is Margaret Wilson, and she's going to tell us a little bit about some of the history and the ongoing support for that history at the Aberdeen neighborhood. Welcome, Margaret. It's good to see you.
Thank you for having us. Mm-hmm.
You guys are busy. You do a lot of activities to support what's going on at Aberdeen, at the museum, and some of the other things.
Absolutely. I'm president of the Aberdeen Gardens Historical Foundation. And each year we have a fundraiser. We raise money to support the activities that the association, Aberdeen Gardens Historic and Civic Association, puts on. That's our basis for being the foundation. That was organized in 1998. It's the 501c3 arm of the association.
So the nonprofit arm.
The nonprofit arm, yes.
Now, tell me just a little bit, what is so special and historic about Aberdeen? I think a lot of people out there hear it, or they hear Aberdeen Museum, but they don't really know how that neighborhood got its start and what you guys continue to do today to share that history.
Well, Aberdeen Gardens was built in 1934 with a grant given by the government to Hampton Institute at the time. The first family moved in on November the 1st, 1937. And since that time, there are still descendants living in Aberdeen that their parents started, and they keep coming back and living in the original homes. What's so unique about it is 158 historic homes in Aberdeen Gardens. We were a village. We were a total family. It did not matter where you lived, but if you had parents, 158 parents, okay? And that's what makes it so unique. And out of the 13 resettlement communities that were built for blacks during the Roosevelt era, we're the only one that's remaining.
So just a little bit more about that. So this was a Roosevelt initiative. It was also probably a WPA or one of the Depression era things, but it was specifically for black families.
Correct.
And it was designed by a black architect.
Right, Hilliard Robinson.
Mm-hmm.
And as I said, there were 13. The other 12 were farms. Aberdeen was the only urban one, and it was the model resettlement community.
And urban, when you say urban, like Aberdeen right now is surrounded by houses. It's all neighborhood. But at the time, those other surrounding neighborhoods probably weren't there. Y'all were in the middle of Elizabeth City County in a much more rural setting, I would think.
Absolutely. When we say urban, we mean it was not a farm.
Right.
They were not farms.
Urban for 1934 is different than urban in 2012.
They weren't farms as such. And unfortunately, some of the farms that were resettlements have not been taken care of, and families have sold the property, etc. But Aberdeen has stayed intact, and what makes us special are the people. We are a family. We get together, and it's like old home week.
You have so many gatherings. I mean, oh my gosh, there's Dean Day, there's your big fundraiser, there's...
We have the breakfast in February. We have the gala in October. That's an annual event. We have the fish fries during some parts of the year. Heritage Day is in June, when we try to invite people to come back to enjoy the heritage that they had when they lived in Aberdeen. Those are the kind of things that we do. And currently we are planning a learning research center at the administration building, because that's next door to the museum, which is at 57 Mary Peak Boulevard. The administration building is at 55 Mary Peak Boulevard. We give tours, and what the house, it's a house. It's a replica of an original home, is the museum. Of course, the federal government does not qualify it as a museum, but to us it is.
Right.
And that's the tour that we give. And
so you've taken one of the original buildings,
yes,
and furnished it like it would have been at the time in the 30s.
Correct.
And kind of show people what that life was like.
Right. And the furniture was donated by residents who lived in Aberdeen, and some families still live there. We do the tours. Whenever people call, they buy an appointment right now, because we're all volunteers.
Right.
We don't have a staff, and we try to keep it open at least 2 or 3 days a week, but it's better if they call and ask for a tour, and we will do so.
So while we're talking about that, Margaret, do you want to give us the phone number so people out there who might want a tour can give you a call?
Yeah, the new telephone number is 251-2 2283. We just got a landline, so I had to remember.
That's very exciting, yeah.
And that number is for the administration building, and the alternate number is 722-2345.
Okay.
So if they call either one of those numbers, we will arrange a tour for them at any time. And if there's a group of people, like 20 or more, we try to, have another person doing the tour. Anything under 20, we can do with one person.
So tell me, again, a little bit more about the original families who settled in that area. Some of them are still in the neighborhood, or at least in Hampton. And you yourself have a little bit of claim to fame.
Well, I try not to tell everyone that. Yeah, I was born in Aberdeen. I was born on Langston Boulevard. And if I don't tell you, the next group will tell you. My grandparents were the first family to move into Aberdeen Gardens. And I like the fact that they were very much a part of Aberdeen. Mm-hmm. And people remember them and fondly, and I'm grateful that they, given them that honor.
And you were the first baby born there, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
I know you're shy, but it's a wonderful fact because it tells the history and the connection,
And I have a big passion. Even though I'm not living there anymore, I am in Aberdeen pretty much every day. For some reason, I'm always in Aberdeen. And I try to work at the administration building at least twice a week. Right now, we're trying to put our historical documents in order. Cataloging, archiving, that kind of thing, to make sure we're putting them in books where people can come and read all about from the beginning, from the 1933 up until the present time.
So for a personal story, what was your grandparents' involvement? What were they doing? How did they get selected or have the opportunity to move to Aberdeen Gardens?
They were handpicked pretty much because everyone who moved into Aberdeen had to have a physical. The entire family, because of tuberculosis and some of the other things were very prevalent at that time. So if they did not pass that, then they could not move in there. And the homes were given to them according to the size of the family. Okay, so we had 3 rooms, 4 rooms, and 5 rooms.
Okay.
And depending on the number of at the time they moved in.
All right.
Okay, that made a difference. Now, what they did after they moved in, because we had some who eventually had like 11 children in a 3-room house, but I mean that didn't matter when you were part of it. Mm-hmm. And when you look back at it now, and if anyone ever noticed a fire out there, the homes are double bricked. The outside doesn't burn, the inside does. There's some uniqueness about those homes. We had indoor plumbing, indoor heat, and hardwood floors.
Wow,
which was
that's
very
pretty
unique.
Unusual in the 30s.
Right, in the 30s, right, very much so. So we were a little special. We felt like we were a little special anyway.
Well, so just tell me a little personal story about your grandparents. Just what they did or what it meant to them, or how special they were.
My grandmother helped people in the neighborhood, but my grandfather worked at the shipyard. But we also had a farm on Pine Chapel and Queen Street. So most of the time we spent not just at the garden, because it is Aberdeen Gardens. Mm-hmm. Everyone pretty much had a garden behind the homes in Aberdeen. But we had a larger farm over on the West Queen Street and Pine Chapel. So between the two, that's what we did. And they were just active people in the neighborhood. My grandfather was very quiet, but my grandmother was pretty active. They belonged to Little Zion Baptist Church, which is where I grew up. So, and it was just, they were just neighborhood. They fed a lot of people. My grandmother opened her doors, and if someone was hungry, you just came in to eat. It didn't matter.
And how many children did they have?
They had 4 when they moved in. Their youngest child was 4 years old when I was born.
Oh, wow.
Yes. So, and so I grew up in a household that had a span of ages in there. They had 3 sons and a daughter.
Now, is that one of the things that is also kind of unique about Aberdeen Gardens to this day, is that multi-generational element?
Absolutely. The next group coming on, the Van family, I think there are about 3 or 4 families of them living in the neighborhood. The Jackson family, he's living in a home. The Burrell family, the oldest child is still living in that home. We have another family, Roundtree, her son has bought a home. So yeah, the people come back It's a draw. It's like a magnet to come back to Aberdeen. Because
now, you went away for a while. You went away to college.
Yes, I went to college, then I married someone who was in the Air Force. We traveled, and when he's deceased, he died, and I was working at the Pentagon. And when I retired, I always knew, and he knew, he wanted to come back to Hampton.
Aww.
And I knew it was no doubt that I was going to always come back home. There's a draw about being in Aberdeen.
That's really, really special.
Yeah, and I enjoy being here, and I enjoy working with the people and remembering the things that we did. We get together sometime and reminisce. It's kind of fun to sit around and talk about it.
But now what's also interesting is you and the foundation are not just about the history. You are working now with the next generation.
Yes.
About after school, or even with some of your seniors with computer classes. Tell me a little bit about what your goals are for that project.
Well, that Learning Research Center is going to be is upstairs in the administration building. We have the computers already set up, and by the end of the year, we hope we can have established the policies and procedures for doing it, where we will have the hours, the volunteers, and type of things that the students can do. The residents can come up and look up family history, any of those things. But we're trying to get that set up now for the community to come in and use. And to me, that's a big project. Not everyone has a computer, and some who have it don't have internet.
Right.
So that's what we're going to supply, afford them the opportunity to come to do that.
And that, I think, is what's, continues to make Aberdeen Gardens this incredibly special place, is that you're not just looking back. You have this tremendous history, but that's not enough. You're still building forward and maintaining those community ties.
Yeah, we're also trying to establish a youth advisory board where we're going to be asking some students to join us, to tell us what they would like to have in the neighborhood, what are their concerns, what are their problems, but what could they bring to us to continue the history? Because that's the toughest part, is trying to get young people, and I don't mean just the teenagers or the 20-year-olds, in my era, the 30 and 40-year-olds, to start taking the task that we have started. Because we want them to be able to continue to keep the history going, the uniqueness of that community going.
And some of that is, you do have so much of it documented. It's in the museum, you've got things written down, you've had photographs donated. I mean, you guys have compiled that history. But it is a little hard to get that younger generation to feel, they've grown up in a different world than the world you grew up in. And to maintain that connection is probably a little bit of a challenge.
Yeah, and we have a website. It's called AberdeenGardens.org. Or anyone wanted to go online, they can go to Aberdeen Gardens, Hampton, Virginia, and get a lot of the history. Although some of it is not as accurate as we would like it to be. Of course, different people that put it in.
Yeah, when you deal with reminiscences, you have that person's perspective and that person's memory, and it may not be exactly what someone else remembers.
But when we do the tours, we try to correct and give the right information. Part of what we tell them is about the rent. Rent was $11 or $15. The most expensive house was $3,300.
So they were rented at the beginning?
In the beginning, and then Mr. Walker, who was our first and only resident manager, William Walker, whose son was a former ambassador to South Africa, and he supports us a little bit now with the student, helping us to get a student there. He arranged with the federal government for people to purchase the homes after a period of time. And we did have 2 families who bought their homes originally, but most of them were renters.
Okay, well, is there anything I've forgotten to ask you?
No, just tell people to come see us. If they can't go anywhere else, they can always come to Aberdeen Gardens. We will show them a good time and show them what a pleasure it is to live in Aberdeen Gardens.
Okay, well, thank you so much for coming by today, Margaret. It is a very special neighborhood, and the fact that you have this ongoing foundation and events and support, the history of the past and future generations is very impressive.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you. And thank you for watching Round Robin.